Battle of Britain Day, the 15th of September, 1940. After the fall of France in July, Britain stands alone against Nazi Germany. Britain does not sue for peace as expected. Hitler orders the planning of an invasion, codenamed Sea Lion. Achieving air superiority over southern England and the English Channel will be critical to the success of Sea Lion. If this can be achieved, Göring's Luftwaffe will negate the power of the Royal Navy, providing cover for the vulnerable invasion barges of the Wehrmacht. Confident after the Luftwaffe's success in Poland and France, Hermann Göring and most of his pilots believe that they will easily achieve victory over the RAF and Britain. The only thing standing in their way, they believe, is the weather. But as the days gave way to weeks of intense aerial combat, they came to learn just how wrong they were. Fighter Command pilots, who would come to be called the Few, rose to meet the bomber formations and their fighter escorts. Routinely outnumbered, their losses were heavy, but most days they gave better than they got. As the weeks of combat dragged on, Fighter Command losses were mounting. Aircraft repair and replacement were mostly keeping pace, but the losses of pilots threatened to overwhelm the pilot replacement program. A few more weeks of this rate of attrition and the RAF would no longer be able to defend England. By the end of August, Fighter Command was stretched thin and cracks had begun to emerge, but it had not broken. The Luftwaffe too had sustained massive losses, and its pilots and crew were becoming frustrated and demoralized. Increasingly desperate, the Luftwaffe eagerly accepted overestimates of their success and assumed that Fighter Command was on its knees. In September, it switched its focus from RAF infrastructure to London, a critical moment in the Battle of Britain. Luftwaffe commanders hoped to draw Fighter Command into decisive battles over the capital, and these attacks would also, it was hoped, crush the morale of the British people and damage or destroy industrial capacity. The 7th, 8th and 9th of September saw large-scale attacks against the port of London. Fighter Command rose to challenge these daylight raids, and Luftwaffe losses were heavy. Bad weather set in, and the Luftwaffe's next concerted effort was to be made when the weather cleared. Despite the presence of RAF fighters and the losses they inflicted, Göring and his commanders still believed that these were the final reserves of Fighter Command. While it was probably too late in the year to launch Operation Sea Lion, overcoming the RAF would go a long way in redeeming the reputation of Göring and the Luftwaffe. And so, with the weather clearing on the 15th of September, two massive daylight raids, one in the morning and one in the late afternoon, were sent with fighter escorts against the rail lines of London. This apparently overwhelming force would draw out and finally crush Fighter Command. And draw them out it did. Fighter Command famously sent up every plane they had available in the area. The numbers of Spitfires and Hurricanes arrayed against them shocked the Luftwaffe crews and pilots, making it clear that Fighter Command was nowhere near finished. Across the day, 1,500 planes would be engaged, making it one of the largest aerial battles in history and marking the climax of the Battle of Britain. Ultimately, the raids were dispersed, having caused little damage to London, while the Luftwaffe lost 18% of the bombers sent to attack it. While further attacks would be made against London and southern England, they increasingly shifted to indiscriminate night raids that would be known as the Blitz. After the 15th of September, it was clear that the Luftwaffe had failed, and the invasion of England by Nazi Germany would not take place in 1940.
The gratitude of every home in our island, in our empire, and indeed throughout the world, except in the abodes of the guilty, goes out to the British airmen who, undaunted by odds, unwearied in their constant challenge and mortal danger, are turning the tide of the world war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.